12 months after our divorce, my phone buzzed late at night. I was sitting alone in my small apartment, the lights dim, the room quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. I had learned to live with silence by then. Silence had become my companion. It did not scare me anymore. When I picked up my phone, I saw his name. Just his name. I stared at it for a long time before opening the message. "We need to talk. Urgently." That was all it said. No greeting, no apology, no warmth. I read it again and again, as if the words might change if I looked long enough. My hands did not shake, my heart did not race. Instead, I felt something soft and heavy settle inside me. I took a slow breath. Then I typed 3 simple words. "Another time." And I put my phone down. That night, I did not cry. A year earlier, I would have broken into pieces over a message like that. I would have stayed awake until morning, replaying every memory, every mistake, every moment when I should have spoken but stayed quiet. But time changes a person. Pain changes a person. And 12 months of learning how to breathe on your own changes you more than you expect. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind drifted back to the beginning, back to who we used to be. When I married him, I believed in forever, not the loud, dramatic kind of forever you see in movies. I believed in quiet mornings, shared meals, and growing old together without needing to say much at all. We were not rich, we were not perfect, but we were hopeful. Our home was small, but it felt full. The kitchen smelled of coffee every morning. The sofa had a dip in the middle where we always sat together. There was laughter then. Soft laughter. The kind that comes from comfort, not excitement. I thought that was enough. In the early years, he used to listen. When I spoke, he looked at me. When I was tired, he noticed. When I was sad, he would sit beside me without asking questions. I remember one rainy evening clearly. The power had gone out, and we sat on the floor with candles between us. The rain tapped gently against the windows. "This feels peaceful," I said. He smiled. "As long as you're here, it is." I believed him. But life does not break all at once. It cracks slowly, quietly. So quietly that you don't notice until the damage is already deep. After a few years, his job became more demanding. He came home later, he talked less, he listened even less. At first, I told myself it was normal. People change, responsibilities grow, love adjusts. I learned to wait. I learned to understand. Or at least, I learned to stay silent. Dinner became a quiet affair. I would cook, set the table, and sit across from him while he scrolled through his phone. "How was your day?" I would ask. "Fine," he would reply. That was all. Sometimes I wanted to say more. I wanted to talk about the ache in my chest, the loneliness that followed me even when he was sitting right there. But I swallowed my words. I did not want to be a burden. The loneliness grew slowly. It settled into the corners of our home, into the spaces between words, into the nights when he turned away from me in bed, already half asleep. I began to feel like a guest in my own marriage. Still, I stayed, because I believed love meant endurance. The arguments did not start loudly. They began as small misunderstandings. A forgotten promise, a missed call, a birthday dinner canceled at the last minute. "You're overreacting," he would say. "I just wanted to matter," I would whisper. He never heard that part. One evening, I tried to talk. I sat across from him at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea. "I feel invisible," I said quietly. He sighed, not in anger, in exhaustion. "I can't do this right now. You're always emotional." That word stayed with me. Emotional, as if feeling was a flaw. After that, I spoke less. I smiled more. I learned how to cry in the shower so he wouldn't hear. The divorce did not happen suddenly. It arrived the way winter does. Slow, certain, unavoidable. We sat in a lawyer's office, papers spread out in front of us. The room smelled of dust and old books. "This is for the best," he said. I nodded, even though my chest felt hollow. We signed our names. Just like that. Years reduced to ink. On the day I moved out, I packed quietly. I left behind the sofa, the plates, the life we built together. At the door, I paused. He stood in the living room, arms crossed. "Take care," he said. I wanted to ask him if any of it mattered, but I didn't. I just nodded and walked away. The first few months alone were the hardest. The silence felt loud. Every sound echoed. I learned how empty a home could feel when there was no one to pretend for. Some nights I slept with the television on, just to feel less alone. Slowly, something changed. I began to enjoy my mornings. I drank my coffee without rushing. I listened to my own thoughts. I realized how tired I had been for years. Not from work, from trying to be enough for someone who had already stopped seeing me. By the time 12 months passed, I was no longer waiting for him to return. I was learning how to stay, with myself. So when his message arrived asking to talk urgently, I did not feel fear. I felt calm, because whatever he wanted to say now, I had already survived the silence. After I sent that reply, another time, I expected him to respond. He didn't. The silence stretched through the night and into the next morning. I woke up early, as I usually did now. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of my apartment, touching the edge of the bed. For a moment, I forgot about the message. Then I remembered, and I noticed something surprising. My chest did not feel tight. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the street below. People moved through their mornings with purpose. A woman walked her dog. A man carried a bag of groceries. Life continued, steady and unaware. Once, I would have paused my entire day for him. Now, I took a slow sip and let the coffee warm my hands. Still, memories have a way of returning when invited, and his message had opened a door I thought I had closed. When we were married, he often said he needed space. "I just need to think," he would say. I learned that space meant silence, and thinking meant I waited alone. There was a time when I used to rehearse conversations in my head before speaking to him. I would plan my words carefully, removing anything that sounded like blame. I softened my tone. I shortened my sentences. I tried to sound easy. "I don't want to fight," I would begin. But somehow it always turned into one. The fights were never loud, no shouting, no slammed doors, just disappointment. The quiet kind that stays long after the words stop. One evening, about a year before the divorce, I asked him something small. "Can we eat together tonight?" He didn't look up from his phone. "I already ate," he said. That was all. I stood there, holding 2 plates. That was the night I realized how alone I felt, even when he was home. After the divorce, people asked me how I was doing. "I'm okay," I told them, and most days that was true. But there were moments, quiet moments, when the weight of everything pressed gently against my heart. Not pain, just sadness. 3 days after his message, he finally replied, "Please, it's important." I stared at the screen. I could almost hear his voice, calm, controlled, certain that I would eventually give in. I didn't answer right away. I went for a walk instead. The air outside was cool. Leaves crunched beneath my shoes. I walked slowly, letting memories surface without fighting them. I remembered the way he used to reach for my hand without thinking. I remembered how safe that felt. I also remembered the nights I cried quietly beside him while he slept. Both memories existed. Both were real. That evening, I replied, "What do you want to talk about?" The dots appeared almost instantly. I made mistakes. I paused. Mistakes. The word felt small for something that had changed the shape of my life. We agreed to meet a week later. A public place, a small cafe near the park. I chose it because it felt neutral, familiar but not emotional, safe. In the days leading up to the meeting, I found myself thinking about him more than I wanted to, not because I missed him, but because I wanted to understand. Why now? Why 12 months later? The night before we met, I barely slept, not from fear, from curiosity. When I arrived at the cafe, he was already there, sitting at a corner table. He looked older, not much, but enough that I noticed. He stood when he saw me. "Hi," he said. "Hi," I replied. We sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of cups clinking filled the space between us. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure either," I answered. That was the truth. He took a breath. "I've been thinking a lot," he began. I waited. "I didn't realize what I lost until you were gone." I listened. I did not interrupt. He talked about work stress, about loneliness, about how quiet the house felt without me. I noticed something strange. He spoke mostly about himself. "I thought you'd always be there," he said softly. That sentence stayed with me. Not, "I loved you," not, "I hurt you," just, "I assumed." When he finally paused, he looked at me. "I want to try again." The cafe felt very quiet. I folded my hands on the table. "I don't know," I said, and for the first time in years, I meant it. He frowned slightly. "You don't know?" I shook my head. "I spent years knowing. You never did." His voice softened. "I've changed." I smiled gently. "So have I." He reached across the table, then stopped halfway. I noticed the hesitation. Once, I would have closed the distance for him. This time, I let it stay open. We talked for another hour, about the past, about misunderstandings, about timing. He apologized, but it felt careful, measured, as if he feared saying too much. When we stood to leave, he said, "Can we talk again?" I nodded. "Maybe." As I walked home, the sky darkened. Streetlights flickered on. I felt something unfamiliar. Not hope, not fear. Clarity. That evening, I sat alone at my kitchen table. I thought about how hard I had fought to keep our marriage alive, how tired I had been, how quiet I had become. I realized something important. He missed the comfort of me, not the work of loving me. Still, part of me wondered, was it possible he truly changed, or was this just loneliness speaking? Over the next few weeks, we talked more. Short messages, occasional calls. He asked about my life, my job, my routines. It felt polite, not intimate. One evening, he said something that shifted everything. "You never thought I'd actually leave me." I closed my eyes. I finally understood. The conflict was not about love, it was about value. And once you learn your worth, you cannot unlearn it. After he said those words, "I never thought you'd actually leave me," something inside me shifted. Not sharply, not painfully. It was more like a curtain being pulled back. I finally saw the shape of our marriage clearly. For years, I had believed I was hard to love, too sensitive, too quiet, too emotional. But sitting alone that night, staring at my reflection in the dark kitchen window, I realized something else.
I was not hard to love. I was easy to take for granted. In the days that followed, his messages became more frequent. Did you eat? Did you get home safely? I was thinking about you. They were kind words, but they arrived too late. Once I would have melted at this attention. Now I noticed how unfamiliar it felt, like wearing a coat that no longer fit. We met again the following weekend. This time he suggested my favorite park. "I remember you loved walking there," he said. I smiled politely. I still do, but I did not tell him why. I loved it because I learned how to walk alone there. We sat on a bench beneath tall trees. The air smelled of grass and earth. Children laughed in the distance. He looked at me carefully, as if studying a photograph from the past. "You seem different," he said. "I am," I replied. He hesitated before speaking again. "There's something I need to tell you." I waited. "When we were married," he began, "I didn't think you'd ever stop loving me." The words were quiet, honest, and heavy. I closed my eyes for a moment, not because I was hurt, but because I was finally free from confusion. "You didn't lose me when I left," I said gently. "You lost me long before that." He looked down. "I didn't know," he whispered. That was when I said the words I had never allowed myself to say before. "I was lonely with you." The sentence sat between us. Still. True. He tried to explain. He talked about pressure, about expectations, about how he thought love would always wait. I listened, because listening had once been my role, but now I listened without carrying responsibility for his feelings. Then he said something that revealed everything. "I need you again." I looked at him. "Why?" I asked softly. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I don't feel whole without you." There it was. He needed me, but he had never learned how to choose me. That night, after I returned home, I couldn't sleep. Not from sadness, from clarity. I thought about the version of myself who begged for small things, time, attention, presence. I felt tenderness toward her. She tried so hard. I also realized something painful but honest. If I went back now, I would disappear again. Not because he was cruel, but because the pattern was already written. 2 days later, he called me late at night. "I can't stop thinking," he said. "I'm scared." I held the phone gently. "I was scared too," I replied, "for a long time." There was silence. Then he asked the question I had been waiting for. "Is there someone else?" I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "No." "Then why won't you come back?" I took a breath, because this answer mattered. Because I finally came back to myself. The line was quiet, but it was true. He didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice sounded small. "I didn't know I was hurting you." I believed him, and that was the saddest part. That was the turning point. Not a fight, not a dramatic goodbye, just two people realizing the truth at different times. Later that week, I found an old box while cleaning. Inside were letters I had written but never given him. Pages filled with feelings I was afraid to voice. I read them slowly, and then I did something unexpected. I let them go. Because closure is not something another person gives you. It is something you choose. After that conversation, something settled inside me. Not relief, not sadness, acceptance. For the first time since the divorce, I stopped wondering what if. I stopped imagining different endings. I stopped replaying moments, searching for the exact place where everything went wrong. Because I finally understood. Nothing went wrong all at once. We simply grew in different directions. I didn't hear from him for a few days, and for once, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. I focused on my routine. I woke early, made my bed, watered the small plant on my windowsill. These simple acts grounded me. They reminded me that life was still moving, gently and steadily. One afternoon, while folding laundry, my phone rang. His name appeared again. I stared at it for a moment. Then I answered. "I've been thinking about everything you've said," he told me. "I didn't realize how much I relied on you to hold everything together." I listened quietly. "I don't expect you to come back," he added, "but I need to say this." I waited. "I'm sorry." Not rushed, not defensive, just sorry. I closed my eyes. Those words had once been everything I wanted. Now they were simply words. Important, but no longer powerful enough to change my direction. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, and I meant it. We talked calmly. No tears, no raised voices, just honesty. He admitted that he missed the comfort of being loved without effort. I admitted that I lost myself trying to be that comfort. "I forgive you," I said softly. The words surprised both of us. Forgiveness did not mean returning. It did not mean forgetting. It meant releasing myself from carrying resentment. He asked one last time, "Is there any chance?" I paused, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to answer with care. "I don't want to rebuild something that taught me how to disappear," I said. There was silence, then a quiet understanding. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed. I expected to cry, but I didn't. Instead, I felt proud, not because I was strong, but because I was honest. In the weeks that followed, I noticed changes in myself. I laughed more easily. I spoke my thoughts without apologizing. I stopped shrinking. One evening, I ran into him unexpectedly at the grocery store. We stood near the produce section, surrounded by colors and ordinary life. "Hi," he said. "Hi," I replied. He smiled gently. "You look well." "I am," I answered. And it was true. We didn't talk long. We didn't need to. Some connections do not require constant presence to be meaningful. As I walked home that night, bags in hand, I felt light. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally aligned with myself. I learned something important through all of this. Love is not just about staying, it's about being seen. You can forgive someone and still choose a different path. You can care and still walk away. You can love deeply and still love yourself more. That realization became my peace. After that conversation, something settled inside me. Not relief, not sadness, acceptance. For the first time since the divorce, I stopped wondering what if. I stopped imagining different endings. I stopped replaying moments, searching for the exact place where everything went wrong. Because I finally understood. Nothing went wrong all at once. We simply grew in different directions. I didn't hear from him for a few days, and for once, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. I focused on my routine. I woke early, made my bed, watered the small plant on my windowsill. These simple acts grounded me. They reminded me that life was still moving, gently and steadily. One afternoon, while folding laundry, my phone rang. His name appeared again. I stared at it for a moment. Then I answered. "I've been thinking about everything you said," he told me. "I didn't realize how much I relied on you to hold everything together." I listened quietly. "I don't expect you to come back," he added. "But I need to say this." I waited. "I'm sorry." Not rushed, not defensive, just sorry. I closed my eyes. Those words had once been everything I wanted. Now they were simply words. Important, but no longer powerful enough to change my direction. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, and I meant it. We talked calmly. No tears, no raised voices, just honesty. He admitted that he missed the comfort of being loved without effort. I admitted that I lost myself trying to be that comfort. "I forgive you," I said softly. The word surprised both of us. Forgiveness did not mean returning. It did not mean forgetting. It meant releasing myself from carrying resentment. He asked one last time, "Is there any chance?" I paused, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to answer with care. "I don't want to rebuild something that taught me how to disappear," I said. There was silence, then a quiet understanding. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed. I expected to cry, but I didn't. Instead, I felt proud, not because I was strong, but because I was honest. In the weeks that followed, I noticed changes in myself. I laughed more easily. I spoke my thoughts without apologizing. I stopped shrinking. One evening, I ran into him unexpectedly at the grocery store. We stood near the produce section, surrounded by colors and ordinary life. "Hi," he said. "Hi," I replied. He smiled gently. "You look well." "I am," I answered, and it was true. We didn't talk long. We didn't need to. Some connections do not require constant presence to be meaningful. As I walked home that night, bags in hand, I felt light. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally aligned with myself. I learned something important through all of this. Love is not just about staying, it's about being seen. You can forgive someone and still choose a different path. You can care and still walk away. You can love deeply and still love yourself more. That realization became my peace.